Hey, this is Basketball Talk 77, and today's video is about 2021 NBA free agency in the offseason. And it's been pretty crazy, even from the first few days. It's only about 5 days of NBA free agency, and yet several stars have changed teams, so much so that many people, including me, are calling it one of the craziest free agency seasons of all time. So, without further ado, let's get into NBA free agency 2021 with the first free agent signing is Chris Paul. Now, Chris Paul did not change teams, but he re-signed with the Suns. And this is a big deal because most people are saying he's probably going to leave. And I believe, and many other people do also believe this, that Chris Paul is integral to the Suns' success. There's no coincidence that before Chris Paul came, the best they ever did was like a 9th seed or a 10th seed, and after Chris Paul came, the best they did was the finals. So he improves the team as much as LeBron does in terms of wins, even though he only scores like 16 points a game, which is pretty crazy. But they've got him back, and that means that they're going to have kind of the same team that they've had in 2020-2021, which means they may have a good chance of making the finals or winning the finals again. However, the NBA has gotten even better. The top of the NBA, the best teams in the NBA, have only gotten more talented, which means that the number of contenders has only risen, and the road to the finals is only going to be harder from here, at least from what the teams look like right now. Because, spoiler alert, most of the players that are going to new teams are going to one of 4 teams, or we can make it 5 teams that are big markets. The Lakers, the Bulls, the Heat, the Nets, and the Knicks. Those 5 teams are the teams that look like big markets right now in the NBA. And they are the ones that are getting predominantly the stars and even the rising stars and rotational pieces in the NBA. All the players who accepted new contracts or signed new extensions, 38% of them went to the Nets, the Knicks, the Lakers, the Bulls, or the Heat. Roughly 38%. And those 5 teams make up a sixth of the league. They make up like 17% of the league. And they had 38% of the extensions / free agency signings. Most players are going to these teams. And so we can expect that this is how it's going to go in the future, and that those teams are going to eventually become contenders. I got a little sidetracked there. Let's move on to the next free agent signing, Kyle Lowry, going to the Miami Heat. This is probably contending for the biggest free agent signing so far, and definitely the one that's been hyped the most. Kyle Lowry signed, it was a sign and trade technically, $90 million over 3 years. Now, technically it was a trade, so Kyle Lowry was traded for Goran Dragic and Precious Achiuwa. I think this is pretty terrible by the Toronto Raptors. They knew that he was leaving. Everybody in the NBA knew it. All the fans knew it. All the GMs knew it. Everyone knew that Kyle Lowry was not going to stay with the Toronto Raptors. And it's not surprising. He's about to retire, and he doesn't want to spend his last years on a losing small market team, which is understandable if not desirable. So they should have traded him. They should have traded him to another team while they still had leverage, instead of waiting until free agency when the most they're able to get back for it is a single young player and a reliable point guard. Speaking of Goran Dragic, I'm sure the Heat fans aren't too happy about losing a guy they've had for a decade. However, they will probably see it as okay because they got Kyle Lowry. So, great for the Heat, not so good for the Toronto Raptors. They could have done something earlier than that, but perhaps they'll be able to start a rebuild at this point. And for the Heat, it's not an amazing trade. I don't think it'll bring them to an NBA Finals or anything like that. It's not the missing piece. If anything, they needed just scoring, but we can talk about the Heat later. Anyway, next trade. And I'll put all the Bulls trades together because they all go together. Lonzo Ball went to the Chicago Bulls. Yet another sign and trade. There's a lot this offseason so far. Lonzo Ball, 4-year, $85 million contract. That's his contract, and it was a sign and trade. So he went for Garrett Temple, Tomas Satoransky, and a second-round pick. And that's what New Orleans got, and the Chicago Bulls will be getting Lonzo Ball. This is a pretty good trade for the Bulls. What they needed was a point guard, a true point guard, and they've gotten part of that. Lonzo Ball is a great full-court transition offense guy in terms of facilitator, and he's going to be a huge help to the Bulls. Kind of terrible for the Pelicans, not going to lie. I mean, you just lost a guy that was one of the best fit with Zion on your team. Better than Brandon Ingram, better than anyone else. Lonzo Ball seemed perfectly made to play with Zion, who was unstoppable in the transition. All he needed was someone to feed the ball to him, and Lonzo was always there. They seem like they want to build around Zion Williamson. Everyone knew who Zion is. There's only one Zion in the league, but everyone knew that they want to build around Zion. It seems reasonable that they want to build around Zion. However, every step they take makes it so that it's unclear if they're actually going to build around Zion. They spent the entire season not really committing to Zion being nucleus of their team. Just to explain what I mean by nucleus, although I think I'll have a definition of this later in the video, essentially a situation where all the offensive actions of a team run through a single player. They should have done what the Knicks did with Julius Randle and made him the nucleus of the team, and the Knicks were able to get to a 4th seed and a playoff spot through that, and the Pelicans got nowhere. And they just continue this. Even after that, they lose yet another player that it could have been so helpful to them if they were wanting to build around Zion in a free agent. And what do they get back? A second-round pick, Tomas Satoransky, and Garrett Temple. That's nowhere near enough for a player like Lonzo, who's always getting better, and the fit is amazing if you want to build around Zion. So, terrible decision by the Pelicans. This is good for the Bulls. Other Bulls free agent sign trade is DeMar DeRozan going to Chicago Bulls. He signed an $85 million 3-year deal with the Chicago Bulls, or not with the Bulls, technically with the Spurs, and then was immediately traded. And the trade is him for Thaddeus Young, first-round pick, and 2 second-round picks. For the Spurs, which were the other team involved, this is a good trade, not for the amount of talent that they got for DeMar DeRozan, but for the overall situation that they're in. They've obviously been going into a rebuild. They should be going into a rebuild. It's the right thing for them to do. And they're getting picks for this. Obviously not enough picks for a player like DeMar DeRozan, but they need to get rid of him because he's not part of a rebuild. He's an old player, so he's not meant to be there. And they already got rid of LaMarcus Aldridge, so it's good that they got rid of their old players and they can officially start a rebuild now. I'm a Spurs fan, and I'm happy to see that they're finally going to start trying to do a rebuild. Anyway, for the Bulls, Lonzo Ball and DeMar DeRozan are 2 pickups that are much appreciated and from Bulls fans, and an amazing choice from them. Their starting lineup could be Lonzo Ball, Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, at power forward Patrick Williams or Lowry Markkanen, and Nikola Vucevic, which is a lineup made of mostly stars and players that are almost good enough to be stars. And that's a winning lineup. I could see them being a 4th or 5th seed, and for the Spurs, they're going to have a real rebuild now without any old players that are giving them wins that they actually don't want. And the Bulls may be a contender next year. Who knows? They've always had bad culture, and that's made it so that they don't really use the talent they have. So they probably have the talent to be like a 2nd seed, but I see them being a 4th seed. Anyway, next trade. We got to keep moving on because there's a lot of things here. Andre Drummond is our next player that has been signed. And this is one that I haven't seen a lot of people talk about, but is still very important. Andre Drummond signed a 1-year deal with the Philadelphia 76ers. And I see this as a very strange trade. I don't know why a team like the 76ers would want Andre Drummond. They already have a player like Joel Embiid, who pretty much is only going to play center and should only play center. And then you have Andre Drummond, who there's no way he's going to play anything else but center. So, seems like you got 2 star or almost star players that are at the center position that Joel Embiid can shoot, but Andre Drummond cannot, and both of them can rebound. Seems like there's going to be a clog in the paint, and we're going to have the 1920 Sixers all over again. Perhaps he's a trade piece. We don't know what Daryl Morey has in store. It doesn't really make sense. Last thing we need to talk about, and I'll do it real quick so we can finish up the video, is Kemba Walker is going to be bought out by the Thunder. His contract will be over with them, and he will be going to the New York Knicks. And this is definitely what the Knicks wanted, and this was definitely what the Knicks needed. When you watched the playoffs, the first round in 2021, the thing you saw was that the Knicks could not do anything offensively if it wasn't through Julius Randle. Remember early in the video when I talked about how the Pelicans should have made Zion like Julius Randle, made him the nucleus of the team? Well, Julius Randle was the nucleus of the team. Some advanced stats show that he used the most possessions offensively of anyone in the NBA. And so, obviously, they used the nucleus, but that comes with a downside, which is there was no one else who could score when Julius Randle wasn't having a good night or a good series, which he wasn't in the first round of the playoffs. And now they're going to have a second option that's reliable enough, which is Kemba Walker. The Thunder don't really lose anything by losing him. It's more cap space, I guess, but they really just didn't need any old players. That's not part of their plan, so it doesn't really matter to them. That's the video. If you enjoyed it, leave a like and subscribe if you want more of this content and you want to be able to be notified about it. Like I said, next videos are going to be either about our misconception about free throw attempts or a rebuild on the Warriors or Wizards. So look out for that. I'll try to make less videos about free agency, but there's a lot of important stuff, and most NBA YouTubers were doing it, so I felt like it's probably obligated to do this. And a lot of important things happened, so we'll have to see what these things mean for the NBA in the next few years and the next season. So, like, subscribe. See you next time.